Hey guys, good afternoon and welcome to episode 48 of the At the Coffee Table podcast. I am Jason Klink, your host, and today my guest is Khalid, a.k.a. the Taekwondo artist on Instagram. And Khalid and I had networked and got acquainted on Instagram based on our podcast adventures. And I was privileged enough to be on Khalid's podcast a couple of weeks ago. So I wanted to return the favor and have him on here today. Khalid is located over in Cologne, Germany, and has been pretty active with American guests on his podcast. As you can tell by his screen name, that he's a martial arts a martial artist that specializes in Taekwondo and Muay Thai. But he's also kind of transformed and morphed that into a little bit of marketing and doing a podcast of his own. So Khalid, thank you for joining me here today.
Anytime, Jason. I really appreciate your offer and doing the podcast with you last time. As you said, was fun, and yeah, I'm happy to be on your show.
Now, being over in Cologne, it's what time of night is it over there right now?
It's now 9 p.m. and 9 minutes. So it's always, with American times, I can just tell the people this. It's at least 6 hours different with Eastern time, and then from there, you all in America know your time. So Central time would be even 1 hour more, and then Mountain time is 8 hours. Pacific is 9 hours, and the aggressive one probably is Hawaii. I mean, I had once a lady from Hawaii. It was 11 hours difference, but it was 9 p.m. my time, so that's no problem. It's easy. But I sometimes even way later podcasts, so I'm used to that. It's all good.
Well, yeah, it's always fun to try to negotiate for those time changes. I have a coaching client that's in Japan, so I'm always trying to be cognizant of her day. But usually, so I think it's like a 12 or 14-hour difference between here and where I'm in the Northeast and in Japan. So I'm just starting my day and she's wrapping up her day. So I just wanted to talk about podcasting and how you got started in podcasting and what was kind of your driving motivation when it came to podcasting.
Yeah, well, I was watching for many years, I think since 2016 or so, on a regular basis, Joe Rogan's podcast. And I always enjoyed it. And, because he's also, some people probably don't know, it has a big martial arts background, and he's also commentating for the UFC. So I always found that was interesting. And I always knew I can talk pretty decent, and people always, told me I can explain things very well. Some people say, especially women, I have a great voice or soothing voice or so they really enjoy listening to my stuff. And I was like, and when you hear your own voice, you always think like, oh, that sounds so stupid, so weird. But with the time, more and more people say that to you, feel okay, maybe there's something about that. And then I said in 2019, okay, let's start finalizing that. I want to also do more podcasts, or also my own podcast. And then I thought, okay, what can I do and how can I start? Of course, YouTube is always an option, but I didn't want to do YouTube because at the beginning, I'm not camera shy, so I can start right away off. I was never shy with anything, but I thought like YouTube at the beginning, I don't have any clue, probably will have way less views than when I do just audio, especially now with the new change of YouTube. The people have like over 10,000, 50,000 real subscribers, and they get between 1,000 and 5,000 clicks. And I felt like it would be probably very frustrating for me. And also because I didn't have crazy camera setups and all that, and that's why I thought if I do it with the phone, I don't want to start right away with YouTube. And then in October 2019, I did my first episode, and then I did a couple in November and December. And since last year, January 6th, I said to myself, okay, shenanigans time is over. Now every day an episode. And so I did before that day 12 episodes. And I thought, okay, what can I do? What kind of topics can I offer the people? And I wrote down a few things on paper. But, I thought, because I think always long term, if I want to do the podcast for several years, of course, you will not have thousands of ideas or 500 ideas in your head. So my goal was always to have guests on. But I knew at the beginning I have to start maybe alone, and and that's how I did it. In most cases, up to last year August, I did most of the times only me talking about certain topics. Sometimes I had even guests on Anchor. That's the app I use for my podcast, and that's how I also started. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then I start with a few martial arts topics, with a few topics for sports and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And then I thought, okay, with the time I tried to get more and more guests on, but um, it was basically by accident when I started last year in August with the podcast with live stream additional, because I had she was my first ever live guest, and that's why she will probably get mentioned all the time when I tell that. Natalie Byrne, she played in a movie with Dolph Lundgren. Many people out there probably know that action star Dolph Lundgren, who played in Rocky IV, the assassin,
Yep.
Ivan Drago. So she played with
Yep.
him in a movie, and then I wanted to call her private on Instagram and then record with my second phone just for audio and then to upload it on Spotify and everything. But she has a blue check mark, and everybody who has a blue check mark, some people maybe experience that as well. You can't call these people on Instagram. It's probably a protection thing from Instagram and against stalking people or so. And then I thought, shit, what can I do? I don't want to lose that opportunity. And then I thought, okay, let's do a live stream, even if it's a one time, but then at least the episode is saved. At least I have it. And then I did
Yeah.
it, and
Yep.
people really liked suddenly, also seeing me. I mean, they saw me already on Instagram and sometimes my videos and the pictures, but I guess it's way different when people see you talking and interacting with your guests. And it was basically the start. And I'm very happy that I did that, because a couple days later I had John Hackleman on my podcast. He's a martial arts legend as well, trained
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Liddell, former UFC light heavyweight champion, and he is 61. So with
Oh
these
wow.
people who are older, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to tell him, okay, don't download Anchor and then do this and that. That's too complicated. Even me, I'm not a technic freak. So I guess that was perfect for me. And then I had several guests who are older, and as you also know, I had Mr. Greg Tierney also on, and he just turned 80 this year. And
Yeah.
I mean, Alexa's helped him, of course, but with older people doing that with the app and you can't see that person is not that easy. And that was basically a perfect start to, since then, my podcast really ramped it up crazy, because for whatever reason, people like it more. And then I thought,
Yep.
okay, let's do both. Still audio for the people on Spotify, iTunes, and all these audio platforms, but as well
Right.
video. And then I just had to figure out how to convert video into audio. And then I asked a friend if there's some possibilities, and
Mm-hmm.
then he said, yeah, you just need to download your video from Instagram with the Instagram downloader app, so everybody can just type in either on Google Play or App Store, just type in Instagram downloader, video downloader, and then you can download your video. And then you need an audio converter. Just type in audio converter for all formats. It's very important for MP3, MP4, and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then I did that. And as soon as I had the audio on Anchor, from there on, it was very easy. And that was basically the start, for my podcast to really ramp it up. But I did since January 6th, every day an episode. Before it was just audio, but
Yeah. How
now
many
I do
episodes
both.
are you up? How many episodes are you
Today
up to? You're
was
up to several
my
hundred.
today was my episode 422.
Wow. And I
Yeah,
thought 48 was
422.
good.
No, it is definitely
But
good. I mean, yeah.
to your credit, though, I mean, you have been consistently every day. I see you every day putting out content,
Thank you.
doing your podcast, having a guest, and just sticking to it. And that's how you got to 400 some odd episodes, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so what I think about too is, when I started learning more and more about social media after I got into real estate, and I started learning more and more about social media. And then, I listened to more of, Gary Vee, and listening to
Mhm.
what his
Yeah.
suggestions are as far as social media content. And then he kept saying audio, 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 audio. And I'm like, oh, well, a podcast would be fun, but I don't know if I'm entertaining enough to put
Yeah.
together a podcast. And then, and
Mhm.
I've said it, 100 times, that if it wasn't for the pandemic lockdown here, I may have not started this podcast, or at least kept it going. And
Yeah.
having that extra time and other people having extra time
Mhm.
to participate, it made, and
Yeah.
now it's a lot of fun.
Oh no, definitely. I totally can understand that and can relate to that because obviously, I mean, I started last year in January. That was before the pandemic. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing for sure is, and that's why Instagram, they lifted up now. Before back then, you could do only 1 hour live stream, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think in November or October last year, they changed it up now to 4 hours, and that fits
Oh,
really good, because if people who watch Joe Rogan's podcast on a regular basis, they know he does podcasts at least 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours. So I think maybe they wanted to match that a little bit. Plus, more people did live streams anyway, whatever they did in that
yeah,
pandemic time, and then they probably saw, okay, that's a good market, to jump on. And I think it's great because then it saves you time. Sometimes I have guests and we talk a little bit over an hour, so there's no rush then at least. And yeah, that's perfect for me. But I definitely understand that entertainment aspect. You think, oh shit, can I do that? I thought the same, and I thought, and because I wanted to specify for martial arts. So, and I also named my podcast the Martial Arts Show 2.0. But then I thought, you know what? I have a lot of different interests, and I'm not, you know, I'm definitely not the stupidest person, so I think I'm pretty smart. So I educate myself in a lot of things, and I thought, you know what, just name it the Martial Arts Show 2.0, so you have brain freedom, and you can later still change the name, but then just start and talk about almost everything, and that's what I do, especially now. I have all sorts of
yeah,
people, doctors, musicians, actors, whatever you name it, athletes, of course, martial arts and training we probably
yep,
always like a red line, and I always will touch that. But I talk about everything at marketing people, business people like you, my podcast. So there's a total
yeah,
variety because I think like that. We as human, even though if we have a passion for one thing or two things, but we still have a lot of other interests. We still read maybe books, watch TV, whatever. So why not, educate the people? For me, I see the podcast like this. I just try to educate people and put it on the platform, and the fan base or the listener, the viewer, they decide what they like, and that's it.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how you said you kind of transformed your podcast into being able to talk about everything, and that's one of the I didn't want to when I did mine I didn't
Mhm.
want to like pigeonhole it into just real estate or my public
Yeah.
safety background. I wanted to be able to talk to many different people. So and the concept behind my title at the coffee table, it comes from my days of being and working in a fire station where we would sit down at a kitchen or a coffee table and we'd solve all the world's problems in 2 hours. We'd sit there
Hmm.
and we would be the best politicians and everything in between, and cure all the problems within a couple of hours over a cup of coffee. So I'm like, I could
Hmm.
really take that and base a lot of conversation of just casual conversation with
Yeah.
anyone. And like you, I mean, I've had business people, I've had health and fitness people, mental health
Hmm.
people. I've even had, public safety friends of mine, real estate colleagues of mine, just all into sitting down, having a conversation about a topic. I've had friends of mine talk about stuff that's, passionate, passions
Hmm.
for them. There's a lot, I think there's a lot to that. And it's just, sharing stories and sharing ideas and maybe coming up with a solution or two.
Yeah. No, definitely, 100%. And that's how my approach is as well. And when I watch Joe Rogan stuff, I try to observe a lot when I see people, when I study people. A lot of people, they're just consumers. They just like what somebody does, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're all consumers in one or the other way. But
Yep.
I always like to observe and to learn something from that. And what I see a lot of times is if you approach the podcast, because it's just a title, podcast or interview is just the headline. But I
Mhm.
approach it as a fun conversation. We both now have just a great conversation talking
Right.
about all sorts of things, and whatever comes up, whatever topic we touch on, we talk
Right.
about that. I don't see like a dry journalism stuff like, okay, I ask you a question, you answer, then break, and then again break.
Right.
That feels like you in university and the professor asks you something and you answer, and it's not really my style. I like more having a flow conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it goes back to like your Joe Rogan example. Joe just sits there and he just talks with his guests and he interacts with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best conversations where you're just sitting and interacting. A lot of
Hmm.
one of the other podcasts that I take in that is typically a group of people is the Real AF with Andy Frisella, and
Hmm.
he'll have his brother and guys that are in business with him and the guests and it's just a group and they just sit around and they take a topic and they run with it.
Yeah.
And it really, there's an entertainment value to that, even though there doesn't seem like there's an entertainment value to
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. No, definitely 100%. Because I think if you have an expert at your podcast and you ask him these questions, he will answer it. But if you think about that, if that expert is well known, how many times did he basically answer all these questions? And if it's always the same and the same, I mean,
Hmm.
I can just imagine I would say, okay, thank you for the offer, but just click my videos and you see all the things, all the answers you want to know. It's a little bit
Yep.
boring and it's also exhausting for them. But if they know, yeah, you maybe talk with um, him or her about certain topics and they probably answered that still hundred or thousand times. But if it's a fun conversation and you talk about
Right.
everything, even let's say you have an author there and you talk about their book, but suddenly you talk for whatever reason about car or about fishing, so then there's always, something different and it makes it more fun.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's just, to me, there's just something not genuine about
Hmm.
scripted
Yeah.
conversations. And like you said, it's
Hmm.
just firing a question after another, and they
It's
give you
boring.
their pre-scripted. Yeah, they just
Yeah.
it's nice to watch people watch the gears turn when you're talking about something that maybe they're passionate about, or you ask them a
Yeah.
question that they weren't exactly expecting, and now they kind of have to think about it for a second. I
Hmm.
think that's more genuine. It provides more value
Yeah.
when it comes to people listening to the podcast.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that's why you see sometimes when guys like Joe Rogan or other people, when they caught somebody off guard or when something goes
Hmm.
viral because it's not really planned. Yeah, sure, everybody knows a little bit what to expect when you go to a show, because they maybe say, okay, we can talk about the new book you have or your new training program. So you definitely have a little bit of an idea what will be the topic. But for me, it's like, I feel comfortable with whatever topic you want to touch on, or somebody does an interview with me. I know there will be, of course, a little bit about my background, a little bit about martial arts, and some
Yep.
advices, whatever, but I'm fine with really every topic. I think I have about almost everything something to say, at least.
Yeah. No. 100%. And just to be able to take, even if we're doing, so I use StreamYard to do my podcast. And the reason I ended up using StreamYard was one of my, actually, the first podcast I was ever on was a young woman out in Oregon who used to
Hmm.
be in real estate, is now marketing director for StreamYard.
Hmm.
But she started using it and had me on her podcast because we were comparing East Coast to West Coast real estate.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, what is such a cool platform? And she's like, oh yeah, because you can download the
Yeah.
video, you can take the audio, and you can put it on Anchor and Spotify.
That's
And
cool.
I'm like, wow. So, and just recently, or this past year, I had her back on my podcast
Hmm.
to talk about her new position with StreamYard and some of the new stuff and so her StreamYard has been able to connect with LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn Live is difficult because you got to have special permission. Not everybody can do
Hmm.
LinkedIn Live like you do Instagram Live or Facebook
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to learn about that. You actually had to ask LinkedIn for permission to do live video. And to
Hmm.
tell you the truth, I submitted a request to be able to connect my podcast to LinkedIn, and I still haven't gotten a decision either way.
Yeah.
So it's I guess the point of my long-winded part there is there's just so many options when it comes to podcasting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're just comfortable doing audio, then do audio. If you're comfortable
Yeah.
doing all of it, then do, because it gives you more options, than
Hmm.
do all of it.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting what you're saying. There's for everybody a platform. I'm like this, just even if people maybe don't believe it because they see now I have so many episodes now, but I cannot break my brain too much about details, what type of app, because that can drive you crazy, especially at the beginning.
Sure.
So I was very
Yep.
happy. I just typed in German, I typed that question in podcast app for audio, so, and then Anchor came up, and then
Yeah.
was just click on Anchor and I saw, okay, a lot of people think it's okay. Oh, it has a great review, and then I just started because And I had, again, no problems with being on camera. But for YouTube, because I always, and that's maybe also from my martial arts background, always strive to be the best, and give the people as much as you can. I thought, if I do with my phone on YouTube videos, you can do it, but it's not the highest standard. And I always want to give people the highest standard as possible. And while with audio, it almost really doesn't matter. You just need to have a decent phone. You need that app, obviously, whatever podcast app you want to use, and then you can
Yep.
speak, record, and that's it. So that's probably the easiest thing. And as you said, some people are maybe more comfortable with audio, then that's perfect for them if they never want to show their face or afraid talking live to people. But
Yep.
for me, there was never a problem. I just didn't think about right away. But sometimes when you're with your back against the wall, then suddenly a solution comes up, and you have to, you
Yep.
know, be creative. And that I was really happy that that day I couldn't basically call her just with video, because I probably would have still done audio, and then probably I would have lost a lot of potential guests, because the Anchor app, and especially now with the new changes, I don't know what happened there, is pretty complicated. Because for Anchor you need to add people on the app.
Mm-hmm.
So far so good, but
Yep.
now it's so weird. You can, if you would type in an Anchor my name or certain names, you for whatever reason will not find it. Now if you can send a link and maybe click on laptop or computer, it's working, but most people do it with the phone, and it's really too complicated. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm happy with the live stream. Plus, again, as I said, I had few older guests, and it's just too aggressive for them to tell them, okay,
Sure.
sir, ma'am, download that app and we do this. So I'm happy with the way it is. But sometimes, the best things happen out of struggle situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of value to that. And when I started my podcast, I started doing it on Zoom. So I would do Zoom
Hmm.
calls and record the Zoom calls, but it wasn't very personalized, and you didn't get a lot of banners or interaction. And there's a ton of value when it comes to live streaming. And if it's live streaming on Instagram or Facebook, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
there's a lot of value to that, because people can go back and watch it later, and then we can take,
Yeah.
like we were saying, take this audio and download it. So if you don't have time to watch the live video or the recorded
Hmm.
video, you can just listen to it as you travel or exercise or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
um, so there's so many different options out there, and it's just finding what you're most comfortable with, I think.
100%. And that's why also I always tell people, never overthink. And you know that
Yeah.
from your business and in
Yep.
general from life. The most
Yep.
people who fail all the time or don't get anything is the ones they overthink. Because if I would have thought about the podcast name, if that name is a cool name or fits, probably still to this day it doesn't really fit, because sometimes people, when I text them, they assume, yeah, but I don't do martial arts, I don't know if I'm a fit for you. And then I have to tell them immediately, hold on, I talk about everything, and that's just the name of my podcast, and then they do it. So sometimes you have to convince also the people. Obviously, you have to text a lot of people, especially at the beginning. If you're not
Yep.
the biggest name, if you want something, you have to get it first. You
Yeah.
can't sit back and like, okay, he will come to me, she will come to me. No, no, no. You have to reach out. And for me, it's like texting 10 to 15 people a day, which is 70 to 100 people a week. And then you
Hmm.
get your podcast divided, split up on different days. And also you have to always think about, because not everybody, even if they say, yeah, cool, I want to do the podcast, they can do in that week. So let's say you text them on Monday, doesn't necessarily mean they can do from Monday to Friday, one of these days available. Sometimes they
Right.
tell you,
Right.
yeah, next week, Tuesday or so, or Wednesday. And then you have to,
Yep.
and I always want to fill my weeks up. So you always have to look a week or two before. So you don't have
Yep.
a gap week. And yeah,
Yep.
that's how I do
Yeah.
it.
No, and it's a huge point, because um I've had a couple of conversations with people. I'm like, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast. I love, what you're
Mhm.
about, what your business about, whatever it might be. And a couple of times I've gotten, well, I'm not really into, I'm not in the industry or the arena of real estate. I'm
Mhm.
like, well, it's not a real estate podcast. It's,
Yeah.
it's a conversation about everything. So
Yeah.
once I explain it to them, they're like, oh, all right, well, okay, let's figure out when we can do this.
Mhm.
And it's funny that you mentioned about, messaging and trying to get people to fill up the schedule. And um, I heard, so one of the other podcasts I listen to is the Real Business Owners, and they're on Instagram. and one of their podcasts, they're like, you know what, people that are successful just want to help, and
Yeah,
you'll never know if they want to participate if you don't ask. And I went, all
that's true.
right. So last spring, I went and asked Trevor Cowley of the Real Business Owners to come on my podcast, and he goes, sure, absolutely. And it was
You
probably one of
see?
the
Yeah,
one of the best episodes I've had. And you never know who you're going to trip over, and you never know
yeah.
where the conversation's going to go.
100%. I can tell you that right away with John Hackleman. I mean, John Hackleman is a really cool, great guy. But now we
Mhm.
are in a great contact, and it's like almost like a friendship-based thing. Although we have that crazy far distance. I'm in Germany. He's in California. But he's
Yep.
these old school martial artists. Like Alexis, that they sometimes tough and rough, and you don't know what to expect. I mean, I knew he will not be rude and say
Right.
mean words to me also, but I still and it was my second ever live stream, and so I didn't really
Hmm.
have experience. And I asked him just because, as you said, just ask. And I was not sure asking because
Yep.
he trained crazy world class athletes like Chuck Liddell, and is known as a tough and hard guy and from the old school. So these martial arts types are always a little bit different. But I just asked, and he said, "Yeah, sure." And then we do it. And then I didn't really expect, how it will be, but it was a great podcast. And it was my second live guest, and that's why I was very happy with that and proud also about that. At the end of the live stream, he said, "You're a really great podcast guy." And when a guy like him, a legend like him, says that to you, and at that age, that's a big compliment. And it was my
For
second
sure.
ever live stream. I didn't really have experience, and plus also because I'm from Germany, my English is definitely not the best. I try to speak as good as I can, but
You
it's
do a
still
good
not my
job. You
mother
do a good
tongue.
job.
Well, thank you. But that's always in your brain as well, and
Yeah.
that's why it was a big honor. Now we have great connection. We did 3 podcasts already, and he's always happy when I text him, and he always says sometimes to me, give me a shout out, and then let me know when you can do another podcast. Sometimes he sends me
Mhm.
stuff from his training or whatever, videos. So now it's perfect. But if I would have had that mindset, shit, he's a hard, tough, rough guy. I better don't ask him. Don't worry. Sometimes even if people look intimidating, or maybe you think, yeah, they're rough. Yeah, if something happens, sure. But usually guys like him are very nice. But just ask. And I do the same. I ask certain actors, big people. Sometimes you
Mhm.
get no reply. With some people, of course, you need to
Right.
know, don't even text them because you
Right.
will not get an answer. But with a lot of people, you can text them, and most people say, yeah, sure, just let me know what time. With some people, you have to really sometimes run after because it's not
Yeah.
always, you don't get always that exact date, but
Right.
persistence and consistency definitely helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And now, so I don't know if you looked at it, and you and I had kind of a quick conversation about Clubhouse and the
Mhm.
Clubhouse app that's
Yeah,
available
yeah,
on Apple.
hmm yeah,
Um, I've listened to I've gone in and done some listening, and I plan on I'd like to
hmm
take this version of the podcast to Clubhouse to
yeah,
expand the conversations.
sure,
But what a fantastic platform that's really exploded, and to me it's like going to a TED talk or some type of conference, and just virtually sticking your hand up in the air, and being
hmm
able to go on stage when it's one of those conferences you probably wouldn't. But if you get in the
yeah,
right room, and I've heard people are making all these amazing connections with people
hmm
that they've never thought that they would.
yeah,
So I find that just the audio version, and it just proves that audio is really grown and is really the entertainment factor of the future.
hmm
So it's gonna be interesting and fun to explore that Clubhouse app some more.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely, I totally agree with that. And as you said in the very beginning, people, when you see guys like Gary Vee, and when he says
Hmm.
something, he may not be good at a lot of things, but when it comes to social media marketing, interacting with people, understanding human habits, he's
Yep.
probably the king of the kings when
Oh
it
yeah.
comes to that. And when he says something about a certain app, that app can be hot, you better jump on that yesterday, So
Yep.
because that's why it's very important. And I think Clubhouse, same like LinkedIn. I mean, now
Yep.
Clubhouse has a little hype. I think a lot of people will jump on that, but LinkedIn the same, still a very underrated platform. People should use
Yeah.
it. TikTok
Yep.
as well, but I feel like a lot of people already use TikTok. But LinkedIn is really underrated platform. You get organic reach. While with Instagram, you can get it, but with Instagram, you have to do either a crazy load of work, and it's just with our busy schedules for most people not really possible, or you have to put a lot of money into the marketing if you want to have specific things, if you want
Yeah.
to achieve specific goals. But LinkedIn is still free, still very organic, and Clubhouse will be probably the same. I think it's
Right.
very interesting. I think in a couple months or so, they probably will also do that for Android, not just for iPhone,
Yeah. Yeah.
because just so many people. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. It's just going to grow their
Yeah,
base, and once they
yeah,
release it for Android. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
100%.
Well,
Yeah.
Khalid, I thank you for taking your time to join me here today. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, first of all, anytime. I really appreciate you, and you do a great job. Your podcast is awesome. When we got in contact, I immediately subscribed to your podcast on Spotify. People should definitely check it out there.
Thank
And
you.
I really, enjoy your posts, and I always like talking to you. And yeah,
Hmm.
people they can just find me on Instagram, and there are all of my links. My Spotify, you will find it always in my story, and my iTunes link is in my bio. And yeah, just on Instagram at Taekwondo Artist, Taekwondo like the sports, and then
Hmm.
artist. Then there you can find me. And yeah, I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you, thank you. So we'll definitely have to do this again. We'll keep. I mean, hopefully, we'll connect some on the Clubhouse app and have a room and a
Yeah,
conversation there. But I appreciate your time coming on today. So with that, everyone,
so
I would appreciate it if you like and share and comment and tell everybody about our podcast and this episode here today.
mhm.
And you'll be able to find it both here, on live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and the video will be on IGTV and Spotify, as we talked about. So with that, everyone, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.